As I mentioned at the top of the show, the S&P down a little bit over 5%. Listen, it's a garden variety correction, and yet my next guest says his clients say they kind of feel worse about things. They're a little concerned here. I'm going to bring in TrendMacro Chief Investment Officer Don Luskin. Don, I was reading your piece, and you point out that it seems like everything going wrong at the same time. I put up a list of some of the things you talked about here. China's housing ecosystem, U.S. mortgage yields, U.S. banking system, and political observation. We've talked a lot in this show about China. The mortgage yield stuff, what's going on? Like, isn't this what the Fed want to happen?
Yes, but that's hard. That's hard. Not much of a recommendation, is it? What the Fed says it wants to do is cause a recession, because they've got this idea that just because inflation was 9% a year ago, that we still have to cause a recession, even though CPI is now down to 3%. So, I don't even know what to hope for when Jay Powell talks at Jackson Hole. Your previous guest probably has it right. He's probably going to tell us that maybe there's one more hike. Maybe we're going to keep rates really high, really long, even though the dots they put up at the last FOMC when they did dots, we're calling for 3 rate cuts next year. He could well contradict that, and that will be a very dangerous day.
U.S. banking system. Madison just had a chart here. Credit card delinquencies for the 100 biggest banks, 2%. For the rest of them, 7%. We know there's a bifurcation within the industry. Some banks have greater exposure to commercial real estate. And now, all of a sudden, the KRE and some of these other indices are pulling back mightily. What do you make of it?
Well, they're all just worried about the Fed just pressing its boot harder and harder and harder on the neck of the banking system and the economy. Already, since Silicon Valley Bank failed, the entire banking system in more than 5 months has only generated $30 billion in new loans. Over a typical 5-month period in history, it should be 150 to $200 billion. A growing economy is like a growing boy. It needs bigger shoes every year. We need more credit every year. Credit's not a bad thing. We need our banks to give us credit, and the Fed is making it so that banks can't do that. And as you say, the commercial real estate business, we need to have access to credit just to roll over the loans that are already there, man. We are playing with fire, my friend.
You have political observation. I'm gonna fold that into the other question I was going to ask you or bring up to you. So this is on the Treasury's website. And they tell you how much has the U.S. government spent this year. And they kind of proudly say $5.3 trillion. That's what they spent this year. And this is the rationale. They're saying, according to the Constitution's preamble, the purpose of the federal government is to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. These goals are achieved through government spending. So it sounds like to me, they're saying the Constitution is saying run amok with deficits, run amok with debt, as long as the people are happy.
Oh, my God. Okay, I've got to go to that website and see that and take a screenshot, because now that you have shamed them by mentioning it, it will not be there tomorrow. You know that, right? That is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and I've heard some pretty stupid things on government websites.
Well, speaking of that, we're entering presidential election season. Your thoughts on the politics and maybe the impact it's having on the markets or the economy?
Well, I think the part that everybody's forgetting is that the No Labels advocacy group has already got $100 million in funding to get a third party, the Unity Party, on all 50 states' ballots. They're going to run a president and a vice president, one drawn from the Republican Party, one drawn from the Democratic Party. The bet is that Biden and Trump are going to be running against each other. Nobody really wants either of them to win. So for the first time in many, 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 many decades, there's going to be a viable third party, and I think they've got a path to 270 electoral college votes, and nobody is talking about that. But
I did. Oh man, I guess Don froze. I was filled in for Neil about 2 weeks ago, and I did interview some of the folks associated with that. It seems really interesting to me. The only thing I didn't like is that these folks that they're talking about running, they're all seasoned politicians, right? I think a third party means someone who has not been in Senate so far, Congress. Maybe that's my thinking, but I think Don is on to something. Don, thank you so much.